I miss my books. And my armchair. And my garden. See, that's where I belong.
So what's your podcast about?
Oh, it's about psychology, true crime, supernatural stuff, the occasional paranormal or philosophical rant.
Well, maybe I could check it out sometime.
I have a plan.
You've got a plan.
Yes.
First of all, you're copying me from when I said I had a plan.
I'm not. People say that all the time. It's not that unique of a thing to say.
Secondly, I don't even believe you have a plan.
Have you ever had a dream that you were so sure was real?
Are you yawning?
What if you were unable to wake from that dream?
Well, I'm breaking it down? Huh? Did you hear what I said?
Once the dead man is revived, we can ask him 5 questions, at which point he will die again, never to be re-revived.
How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
I know why you choose to have your little group therapy sessions in broad daylight.
What exactly is it that they do?
Kick names.
Fantastic.
We gotta coalesce. Because if all we come at him with is a plucky attitude...
Dude, don't call us plucky. We don't know what it means. All right, we're optimistic, yes. I like your plan, except it sucks.
Were you killed in the Battle of the Everglades?
Yes.
One more question, right?
Yes.
No, that wasn't for you. Did that count as a question?
Yes.
Only answer when I talk to you, okay?
Yes.
Why did you say okay at the end of that?
I didn't.
I have part of a plan.
What percentage?
I don't know, 12%.
12%?
That's a fake laugh.
It's real!
Totally fake.
That is the most real, authentic, hysterical laugh of my entire life because that is not a plan.
Well, that's a little hurtful.
They're drawn to mental energy. The higher the intelligence of the prey, the more likely they are to strike. I am Groot.
So what? It's better than 11%. What the hell does that have to do with anything?
I wasn't listening. I was thinking of something else.
This is your nautical lantern on the dangerous seas of darkness. Let's push off from the placid shore of the status quo and explore what's beyond the horizon. I am your host, BT, and this is Truth and Shadow, your podcast of the supernatural.
I sometimes think we misunderstand why stories exist at all. We talk about them as entertainment, as diversion, as something ornamental that sits on the edges of real life. But stories were never meant to live at the edges. Long before we wrote them down, before we categorized them or analyzed them or decided which ones were respectable, which ones were childish, stories were how we stayed human in a world that did not particularly care whether we survived or not. There was a time when the world was dark in ways we can barely imagine now. Not just because there was no electric light, but because there were no explanations, no guarantees, no sense that anyone was in control. And so people gathered, out of some kind of necessity. They gathered because the fire was warm, sure, also because the fire illuminated faces, and faces reminded them that they were not alone. It was around that fire that stories were told, and those stories carried something essential. They carried collective memory. They said, this is who we are, and this is what we have learned, and this is how we have survived long enough to tell you. And that is what myth is. It's not a relic of a naive past. It is survival technology. Myth compresses human experience into narrative form because raw truth, data, it's too unwieldy to pass on intact. No one gains the benefits of data preserved in a spreadsheet. Not going to remember that. It's myth. Myth is not there to argue with you. It doesn't demand that you agree with it. It simply tells you a story and waits to see which part of you responds. This is why stories outlast civilizations. Empires come and go. Languages appear and disappear. Gods they're renamed. But the stories, they keep walking. They slip across borders and centuries, wearing new faces, speaking in new languages. They carry the same structure underneath. When you read Greek myth or Norse saga, or even indigenous tales passed down through generations orally, you're not reading something obsolete. You are becoming part of a conversation humanity has been having with itself for a very long time. Across those cultures, across those stories, certain human qualities appear again and again, not because storytellers lacked imagination, because these qualities are unavoidable. We see courage, and it's not that sanitized kind that we like to celebrate. No, this is the mythic courage. And it's not confidence. It's the decision to act while fully aware of the cost, a cost that may take your own life. Achilles knows exactly what choosing glory will cost him. The Norse gods knew how the story ends in Ragnarok, yet they prepare for the fight. Myth does not promise that courage will save you. It promises only that courage will mean something in the end. And what is courage without sacrifice? Myth treats it with such a seriousness we sometimes seem to avoid. Prometheus steals the fire and suffers for it for eternity. Tyr places his hands in the wolf's mouth, knowing full well he's gonna lose it. These are not metaphors for generosity. They are acknowledgments that something valuable cannot be gained without something else being lost. Myth insists, quietly but relentlessly, that creation is expensive and worth it. And then there's hubris. It's a word the Greeks understood with frightening precision. Hubris is not simply arrogance. It is the belief that one is exempt from limits. Icarus flies too high because he forgets restraint. Kings fall because they mistake power for immunity. Even gods stumble when they forget that the world does not revolve around them. Wisdom follows, but only through suffering. There is no myth in which wisdom is handed out freely. Odin gives an eye. Heroes are going to descend into the underworld. Understanding is always paid for, and myth never pretends otherwise. Wisdom is not information. It's what remains after life has taken something from you, and you have survived the taking of it. But there is another quality that myth understands intimately that we rarely speak about anymore, perhaps because it's uncomfortable. It's not noble. It's not clean. It is the adaptive intelligence. It's the ability to survive when strength fails. The ability to move out of the way when the stuff coming from in front of you will only bring destruction. The ability to break rules that no longer serve humanity. And this is where my favorite character of mythology comes in, Coyote. Coyote's not a hero. He's not wise in the respectable sense. He is hungry, impulsive, clever, frequently wrong. He lies, cheats, steals, gets burned, dies, comes back. And yet the world learns through him. Coyote represents the intelligence that survives not by being correct, but by being responsive to what life throws at us. There is an old story, it's told in many versions across time, about when fire existed but humans didn't have it, and I'm going to tell that story here. A long time ago, humans came into being, and they loved the world. They loved springtime with the beautiful emerging plant life. They loved the summer, a time of berries and growth. And as autumn came, the nights became colder, and the humans shivered. The children and elders would die from the cold. Winter was a very hard time. One day, Coyote wandered by the human village. He could hear the wailing of the humans as they mourned the loved ones who had died in the cold of winter. Spring was finally coming, and Coyote heard an old one say, "Feel the warmth of the sun? If only we could have such warmth in the winter to heat our teepees." Coyote was not of the human people, so he had no need for fire. But he felt sorry for the men and the women who were sad about the others who had died. You see, Coyote knew that on the top of a far mountain, 3 fire beings lived. And these fire beings, they hoarded the fire and would not share it with anyone. Coyote crept to the mountain to see how the fire beings were guarding the fire. Coyote watched the fire beings for many days. He watched the fire as it was fed with dry things from the land like pine cones and twigs. He watched how the fire beings took turns guarding the fire one at a time at night while the others slept. Coyote went back down the mountain to speak to his friends among the animal people. He told them of the shivering, hairless humans and their need for fire. He told them of the selfish fire beings and their inability to share. He asked his friends among the animal people to help him. Squirrel, chipmunk, frog, and wood all offered to help Coyote bring the fire to the humans. Coyote crept back up the mountain, and as the fire beings were changing the guard for the fire, Coyote leapt up and took a burning coal. Immediately he turned and ran down the mountain. The fire beings flew after him, clawing to try to get their fire back. One being touched the tip of Coyote's tail, which has since always been white. Coyote threw the fire and Squirrel caught it. The coal touched his back and his tail has been arched ever since. The Squirrel threw the ember to the Chipmunk, who froze in fear. Finally he turned and ran, but a fire being clawed his back, giving him white stripes forever. Chipmunk threw the burning coal to Frog, who turned and hopped away. One of the fire beings grabbed Frog's tail, but Frog jumped and tore free, and thus he has no tail. The fire beings came at Frog again, and Frog flung the coal at Wood. Wood kept the coal safe, but the fire beings could not figure out how to get the coal from Wood. They yelled at it, they sang to it, they even promised presents to it, but Wood did not give up the coal. Finally, the fire beings returned to the mountain and left the people alone, assuming that if they could not release the coal, neither could the animal people. Coyote took Wood to the human village and showed them how to get fire from the wood. He took 2 sticks, he sharpened one of them, and he put it in a hole in the other piece of wood. Fire came to the humans, and they were never cold again. That story matters now, perhaps more than ever. It reminds us that rigidity breaks, but flexibility survives. That dignity does not keep you warm, fire does. And that sometimes the figures who save the world do not look like heroes at all. For writers, this is a quiet warning and an invitation. If you want to tell stories that last, you cannot write only about ideals. You must write about the risk, the foolishness, the improvisation, and the strange intelligence that emerges when certainty collapses. Human life does not unfold cleanly. It loops, detours, stumbles, adapts. Myth knows this, and that is why it gives us tricksters alongside those gods and heroes. Stories are not escapes from reality. They are maps for navigating it. Myth is the oldest map we have, etched into the human memory long before we had names for psychology, or trauma, or meaning. When you read these stories, and when you write from within that tradition, you are not inventing something new so much as continuing a transmission. Your task is not originality, it's honesty. Somewhere, someone once ran into the dark, stole fire, and paid the price so that others could live differently. Every story is worth telling remembers that moment, and every writer, whether they know it or not, is standing in its afterglow, deciding whether they will simply admire the fire or risk carrying it forward, knowing it may burn them too.
There's an old belief that the true alchemists never were after gold. They were after something rarer, the moment when matter transcends the physical realm and becomes spirit. In the hands of a storyteller, that same moment happens when words, mere ink on a page, suddenly give life. When a golem rises from the table, when the raising of the dead means more than a return to the flesh. Today we're speaking with an author who doesn't just build worlds, he forges them. His stories burn with iron and frost, their souls hammered on the anvil of imagination. So let's open the grimoire of imagination and talk about what every writer secretly practices: alchemy. The transformation of pain into wonder, fear into art, and silence into story. He is the world forger, character creator, and alchemical imaginarian. Ben, welcome back to Truth and Shadow Podcast.
I like that. I don't think I've had introduction quite like that before. It's even better than the last one. That's awesome. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
So how's life treating you these days? I mean, you've been in Canada for a while and you've flown over to the Isles. I mean, how's life? How's the environment treating you?
Yeah, it is. It's been a busy couple of years, or a busy couple of months or so, or just busy in general. I feel like I have been ever since I got past about 10 or 15 books. It just there's more things to do all the time. But otherwise, life is fantastic. Yeah, getting a lot of things done, releasing short stories all over the place. Got new books on the horizon. Fresh starts on a couple of different things as well, which is great. Kickstarters are wrapping up loads of stuff.
It's true. So when you're not world building or writing, what kind of hobbies pull you away from your desk?
Good question. First off, a lot of gaming. I've always been gaming ever since I think I was a child when I had one of the older Atari. I forget what they're called now, but the original Ataris. And then yeah, when it was just when desktop computers were becoming kind of available and slightly smaller and easier to buy, which is great. And then yeah, I remember getting my first PlayStation, first Xbox. So yeah, gaming has always been a huge part of my life. So I'm either gaming on my Xbox or in my VR headset, which is a new thing that I really, really enjoy. What else? I love to. I picked up some like clay sculpting and modeling recently as well, which is a fun little hobby. So Fimo clay is the one that I use, and I've been making lots of little tiny weird creatures and odd jewelry and things like that. But otherwise, mostly at the moment, it's HEMA, historical European martial arts. So I do longsword, side sword. I do quarterstaff, polearm, shield, and axe, and all sorts of great stuff. Axe throwing and archery as well. I can't forget those. And so yeah, I spend a lot of my time kind of really just delving into the history of that, the discipline of the Italian longsword primarily, but a lot of other, English, Spanish, late Italian, German, of course, and also some Japanese sword arts as well. So, yeah, a lot of bladed items in my house, which causes concern to any visitor.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, what does a normal day look for Ben Galley? If you're going to be writing, hobby doing, I mean, what does a normal day look at for you in the case of your
Mm.
writing and your just your life?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I like to when I can. The ideal day, I'd say, kind of like it's. I mean, most of the days kind of work out like this, but not every day does when you're self-employed and there's lots of different irons in the fire and facets. But yeah, the kind of normal slash ideal day is I try and wake up kind of early-ish, 7, 6 a.m., maybe latest 8 if I'm feeling tired. I try and get the gym in nice and early, get it out of the way, otherwise I never go because obviously being a sedentary kind of an author and having a lot of kind of desk-based lifestyle and work life. So yeah, you need to get the exercise in, need to get as much of the blood pumping through, remind your body that you're not just a vegetable sitting at a desk writing books. So yeah, try to get the gym in. After that, straight into a little tiny bit of admin if there's any kind of pressing emails or anything like that, but mostly straight into the books. I write best in the mornings and kind of really late at night in the darkness. So yeah, I like to try and get at least 3 to 4 hours done. So that'll normally take me to kind of around midday, 1 o'clock. And then from then it's just, break, then back into the marketing, the admin, and the authory stuff we have to do when we're not writing. Obviously, I help a lot of authors as well, self publish and market their books. So I do a lot of consultation calls in the afternoon as well. And then in the evening, I'm normally kind of just still on my laptop, just doing random things. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I like working with the TV on in the background as well. So I get through a lot of kind of shows and movies while I'm actually doing stuff, thanks to the ADHD brain. So yeah, basically that's kind of the normal day. There's some food in there somewhere, or occasionally, a trip to a pub or a bar just to kind of, imbibe something while I'm writing, which is nice. So yeah, and or read a book in a bar. I know it sounds pretentious, but I just like, a bar atmosphere, some noise canceling headphones, so I can hear a bit of the, not quite noise canceling, but I like to hear a little bit of the surrounding kind of, ambience. And then yeah, nice cozy bar, old fashioned or a little whiskey and a good book.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I find a lot of my writing is done really early in the morning, and oddly enough, I go to a Starbucks to do it because I need the noise. The ADHD brain is a real thing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of background noise, and that's why I like having the TV on in the background a lot of the time. And yeah, it's something that I've kind of really got into is yeah, making sure I'm not just in the. I mean, I love my desk. I've set up my little writing cave in my apartment, but yeah, getting out and writing in different places is always good for the imagination. People watching, the amount of random kind of yeah people in bars that have found themselves in a book, not for long usually, because I'm always killing off characters. But yeah, it's always good for inspiration, I find. And yeah, coffee shops, bars are great. Or even just kind of, I like if it's the weather's nice enough as well, sitting in the park. I write a lot on my phone, so that makes me extra mobile as well as a laptop. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
So, what kind of books do you find yourself reading the most often? I mean, of any of the genres out there?
Fantasy. Well, saying that, a lot of fantasy, of course. I mean, I've grown up on fantasy, grown up on a lot of sci-fi as well. So, kind of been treading into a bit more sci-fi recently. But otherwise, I really like a lot of non-fiction as well. Some history. I like kind of odd history, kind of quirky history. I've read a lot of just kind of, not textbooks, but very kind of just, step by step kind of history and just informative. But I also like history when it's told, kind of quirkily, or if it's a fun sort of area of history that is doesn't get a lot of, kind of exposure or talked about. So I read one of the best books I read last year was The History of Alcohol and Drinking, and which was honestly fantastic. History of Drunkenness, I think it's called. And yeah, just really kind of books that catch my eye that are just really interesting, really immersive. I believe it was Kings and Queens as well by David Mitchell. I'm going to say, yep, from Peep Show. He's a fantastic historian, and he writes really, really well. So that was one of the last history books I read, which is just a history of kind of Britain's kings and queens from, the Anglo-Saxon times, pre Hastings as well, into kind of around the late medieval period, to, yeah, early modern period.
Yeah, there's a lot of inspiration in many of these different kind of books. I find if I can find a true crime book that's specifically dealing with one specific person, right? So maybe a book about Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, just an example. I haven't read anything about him yet, but John Wayne Gacy. I read a book about John Wayne Gacy. That's a good example. Just reading about these guys, it seems to help form the creative spark because you can kind of look at both sides of a situation in a different way, as opposed to looking at fantasy and going, "Hey, I could do that."
That's it. Yeah, I like to kind of take from other sources. I watch a lot of true crime documentaries as well because there is a fascination with people who cross the moral boundary into murder, and of course, obviously, the serial killers are obviously leagues above, the average murder, which is just it ramps up the kind of morbid curiosity, horror, and again, kind of I find it really interesting to look at kind of all the elements of the human psyche. And again, it's not necessarily inspiring, but it's informative from a psychological point of view to really figure out what makes people tick. And sometimes, there are people who are just absolutely crazy.
It's true.
And, they're kind of the most dangerous
The
villains. So.
writer, I think writers have the most interesting web search history out there. The stuff that makes them go, why are
Oh,
you
God.
red flags for the FBI all the time?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I made a TikTok about that, I think about a year or two ago. And it's just, yeah, I kind of dread sometimes. That's why I'm always on private browsing mode just to make sure. But yeah, it's always kind of things about, and it's honest searching. I'm just really curious about it. It's not, nothing else outside of books, but sometimes you need to search, natural poisons or was the one I searched a little years back, but how much pressure it takes to crush a human skull. Because I had a character who's incredibly strong and has massive hands and is a stone golem. So he's, designed to do that. And it's, yeah, I always wonder what lists I'm on somewhere out
That's
there.
right. See, told you. So something that's I'm curious about, and every author's different on the answering of this question. Every once in a while, we do get to a place where we're against the wall, right? Where we've been writing, the creative muse has been flowing through us, but just something just stops us. There's a wall, and it's like, hey, it's just something's bugging me here. What kind of and everybody's got a reset button. So what's your reset button to get you back into the creative mindset when that fog rolls in?
Big one, go for a walk. You know, it's fantastic for creative thinking and processing in general. Even just a half an hour stroll, you know, around the block or two, really, really does help me. And it just helps my, my brain kind of shift gears and get into a different brain space or space in general. Yeah, it's good to get the blood flowing as well. So I think any form of exercise, even just for a short period of time, can really, really help. Mild or intense exercise, completely up to you and your circumstances. But that really, really does help. Otherwise, I often find there's just kind of a kink in my plan. And, something like a stumbling block that I haven't figured something out, or it's feeling like it's kind of fraying and not necessarily kind of weaving itself into something coherent. So for me, yeah, I'd normally go back to my plan as well, and I'll just sort of look at the book in a macro view and think, really, what am I doing here? And I go, a lot of the time, I'll go back to the start of the book and just start kind of editing. And then I realize the original kind of roots of things, because characters and plans drift all the way through books. So going back and having a look at that really helps me figure out where I started and what my original ideas were, and where, what is the gap between then and now. And I find that is really useful because I am a planner. I do kind of pants within, certain kind of boundaries. I'll normally just come straight into the first chapter with a load of ideas, get it down, work off just the pure inspiration, and then I need to settle down and do it. And obviously, then I do a lot of, I do a huge amount of planning. My planning documents are massive. They are streams of consciousnesses. They are, then formalized into a lot of not spreadsheets, but just tables of just details and characters and things like that. I don't necessarily write formulaically, but I do try to follow a lot of standard structures. And a lot of kind of story, the main kind of storytelling arcs that you use, the hero's journey, Dan Harmon's story cycle. And so I will kind of spend a lot of time working towards those and then throw it all out the window halfway through and then come back to it. So I normally find there's about 2 or 3 points throughout the book where I normally just stop, replan, and then keep going. Otherwise, yeah, I've started jumping from chapters. If I can't finish something, I just move on to the next one and I'll leave a little note and come back and finish it, which I've done a lot throughout the years, but I do it way more now, which I find is quite useful as well, just to keep the inspiration high. Move to a battle scene or a fight scene or a car chase or a dragon chase or lots of different things. I say car chase because I just wrote, I think, my first actual car chase in a book ever, which is good because I'm writing sci-fi. Yeah, sci-fi right now.
The something that I wanted to ask, and kind of just look at this one was, do you do most of your writing, at a computer? Do you ever handwrite? Do you just do which is the method that you seem to do the most?
I type very quickly, not as fast as some people can type. I mean, a lot of people get a lot of words done. My co-author David Estes and people like Andy Peliquin, it's just unbelievable speed that they can actually write. In terms of physical typing, I'm very, very fast. So I find it super easy. I've been on computers since I was a kid, like I said. So it's just typing is always the best way to do it. I cannot dictate. My handwriting is awful. I can barely understand it. I write in all caps, and I have done for about 10 years now, just because it's just easier for me, but it's slower. So my kind of brain, my flow state seems to flow at the speed of typing rather than anything else. But then, in terms of the actual medium I'm typing on, I write a lot on my phone, and that came from when I wrote my first book, or was writing my first book in sort of 2009, maybe kind of late 2008, is when I had a job in a bar, and I was all I wanted to do was go home back to my laptop and my computer. I forget what I had at that point, and write, but I couldn't. So I started writing on my phone in a notes app, and I still do that to this day. And that's when I'll do, if I'm on public transport or sat somewhere or waiting for something, I'll just break out my phone and just start writing. So yeah, I'm able to kind of I don't know how, but sometimes just leave off exactly where I was in the book. Even if it's been a couple of days, I'm just like, yeah, I can remember the sentence, and then just keep going on my phone. So I've got lots of different little kind of pieces everywhere. iPads, not so much, unless there's an external keyboard, but basically laptop and phone. That's my mediums. Well, those are my mediums. I mean, a lot of people handwrite. A lot of people. I mean, I've got a remarkable. I normally use it for kind of planning and scribbling notes and things like that, which is quite fun. But I know a lot of my authors, like Rob J. Hayes, or author friends, I should say, not my authors, my author friends. Yeah, I think Rob J. Hayes writes a lot on his remarkable. And it's, that's kind of easy because you can turn your handwriting to text, which is absolute godsend. But the old school writing with fountain pen and notebook, typing that back up, I know it's part or can be part of an editing process, which is quite useful, but it's the transcribing. If you're just doing pure transcribing, I would dread that.
Exactly. Nope.
I would
That's exactly what
absolutely dread
happens.
it.
It is edits.
And I feel that's just like for me, yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of people write in lots of different ways. Dictation, like I mentioned, is a big one for a lot of people. And it's incredibly useful that we have these programs out there. Like Dragon, for example, is amazing. But it's just, again, not. It doesn't kind of mesh. It's like gears in a car. It's not quite. My gears kind of don't move at either just different speed, not like faster, slower, just different, and they don't quite mesh with that. When I'm doing dictation.
That's great. So let's look at some of this other things, these hobbies, because I honestly believe that our hobbies do influence and interact with our writing. If we're an author at all, anything we do outside of the creation of novels, I really believe our hobbies influence that. So, for example, we ride horseback, so I know quite well what behaviors of a horse. So that if I write about a horse scene, it's going to be it's going to be precise. So, for example, you've mentioned the practice of like the medieval martial, the sword play. So has that physical discipline shaped how you write combat or even some of the psychology of your characters?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, I've always been, I would say, I wouldn't say quite aware, and not necessarily fact based, but I mean, you're obviously writing fantasy, so the things aren't always realistic. But I always wanted my fight scenes and battle scenes to feel realistic, and so I always believe in writing the five senses in the way that what is the smell, what is the not necessarily all the time taste, but you can always put taste in there as well. What does it sound like, what does it feel like, etc., etc. So for me, I always try and kind of put in as much realism without bogging down the reader in details to make things more visceral, more immersive, etc. But there's a lot of things I've got wrong since taking up HEMA. It's just certain things that I didn't know what it was like, or how heavy necessarily armor was, or how absolutely exhausting even being unarmored and throwing around a 1.5-2 kilogram sword, or a 3 pound sword. It that Even today I was out in the fields just practicing. It's been a week because I've been traveling, and my shoulders are on fire just doing basic slow forms. And so it's given me a kind of real insight into how strong and how much endurance my characters must actually have to do the things that I write for them. And how back in the day, how terrifying and just exhausting actual battles and even just one-on-one duels could be. So I think that's one of the things I've really, really learned. And even just into the details as well. It's kind of really expanded my knowledge on the actual details of how a sword fight is actually won, and it is incredibly technical. There's a lot of big actions. We see in movies, TV, films, games, all sorts of things. We see a lot of big actions and just incredible kind of not necessarily inhuman, but close to kind of feats of swordplay. Whereas some of the German, Italian, Spanish, Japanese masters could probably just slight flick of the sword and extend of the hands, and you're done. Which isn't, of course, that cinematic. In a lot of times it is. Obviously, if you've ever just googled HEMA and look at HEMA tournament fights, they're incredibly fast, they're incredibly brutal, and very technical, and very cinematic. But a lot of the times it's just the tiny little differences, even just twisting the sword hand around or using one edge of the sword instead of the other to do things. And there's a huge amount to learn, and that's why these art forms are 600, 700 years old. obviously older, but they were first kind of written down and codified around that time across the world, for the most part. There is obviously loads of other texts that have been lost, from previous civilizations and previous, fighting or martial forms. But yeah, the details I feel that have really, they've really crept into my writing, and I think made my fights a lot more realistic and possible within the realm of a fantasy world. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because fantasy is still fantasy. You can violate physical world rules all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can explode fire along the blade or something mid-duel, which is always one of my favorite cinematic things to put in. And you might be fighting a dragon or a mountain or something like that. So there's obviously a lot of leeway, but I noticed over the looks I've been doing HEMA for about 2.5 years now, about 2 years. And I've been doing a lot of Japanese martial arts, a lot longer than that. But yes, since I think it was in the last 2 or 3 books that I've written in that time period, the fight scenes have got a lot more, not bogging the reader down, but they got a lot more technical. And I've become very, very kind of, I don't care because it's movies and TV. It's designed to be fun, but I watch them with a different eye now. I was just watching the Witcher fight. Yeah, the Witcher fight that's been going around from the new series. I haven't watched the new series yet, but one of the Witcher hunters slays like 5 people in a street. And again, I wish I knew the names. I'm just not up to date on the series or the books. But it's very cinematic. But I'm like, could I have taken him? Maybe. Absolutely not. That guy's brutal. The character Leo, I think is his name, played by the guy who's in District 9 and Elysium, and he's fantastic as that character from what I've seen, but he is brutal fighter, and I'm like, no, I'd probably just take him very far away with an arrow if I could. Though someone tries that and I think he just dodges it. Oh well. But yeah, I watch it with a different eye.
So one of the things too is usually, we do, if we do stuff like martial arts, stuff like that, anyways, and we're writing it, do you find yourself kind of feeling the scene kind of if you're doing a combat scene between, opponents, some kind of duel, do you kind of feel the motions in your bodies to help you navigate what you're going to write?
Yeah, I've acted things out before. I sort of block it or choreograph it sometimes. I have a very visual imagination, so I can, even when I'm not sparring, but I'm doing solo drills with my longsword or katana or anything like that. I can almost see an opponent in front of me and things like that. So when I write, I can see almost every single detail. So yeah, that's definitely something that really, really helps me when I'm writing. So yeah, I just kind of try and imagine it and see if it's possible, physically speaking, if I'm writing a human character without any kind of special powers or superhuman strength. And yeah, but it's something I have done. I've wandered around my living room thinking like, well, if I do this, they can do that. Can I do that? Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, trying to make it cinematic.
One of the questions that I'm kind of puzzling out is when we are dealing with these character creations, right? Sometimes at the same time we're dealing with in our own lives something difficult, something that may be pressing on our own psyche somehow. Do you ever write in such a way to kind of help you answer any of those questions?
Yes, I think so. I think that's why I'm delving into this sci-fi book. It was actually a book that I started writing in 2011, I think, maybe 2012. Just a random idea came to my head one day. I shelved it. I wrote the first, I think, chapter and a half. And yeah, completely shelved it because I was writing the Emaneska series at the time and that needed all of my attention. But again, that's why I've come back to it recently because it is about AI. It is about, futuristic, not post-apocalyptic, but kind of just not quite a dystopia, but on its way to being a dystopia. So it's got elements of things like Black Mirror, cyberpunk. It's kind of a tech noir. Blade Runner's been a big inspiration for it as well. The Alien Earth series actually has been a really big inspiration recently. And so, yeah, that kind of thing is obviously a concern for a lot of people, AI specifically right now. And so, yeah, my kind of my worries or, curiosity or my thoughts have definitely kind of been behind delving into this book. And it's been really interesting and kind of fun as well, obviously, but interesting to explore and extrapolate, from my ideas and my, what I see in the world around me. Certain, religious and political themes over the last 15 years have crept into my books, of course. Um, and yeah, it's something that even personally as well, some of my own, just kind of my own opinions or my own past experiences have obviously crept into my characters as well. I've known a lot of, interacted with a lot of people where, their vices or downfalls or something that's really harmed them have been drug related. So, there's a lot of characters in my books that, struggle, or one of the main characters in my books has struggled with drugs for, 4, 5, 6 books, and things like that. So it's, yeah, definitely true, I think, Brandon. Yeah, the way that it just kind of seeps in to your books and your writing. Yeah. And it is definitely an exercise in exploration as well as extrapolation. Yeah, it's something I think all authors do. But yeah, I try not to make a point necessarily. I do make minor points and I do obviously, like I say, express my opinions, but I'm not there necessarily to preach. Do I think that my books could change the world? No, I'm not that, prideful. I always just set out to brighten someone's day with immersion. So that's what I always do. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of, maybe we've lost a family member or something like that. We can introduce that grief theme into a story and help
Yeah.
us walk through that feeling, that emotions. Because, I mean, come on, right? Grief sucks.
That it does. Yeah.
So if you were to spend 1 year inside of any of the worlds that you have created, which one do you think you would survive the longest in? You, Ben Galley.
Ooh, ah. It's a good question. I mean, excuse me. I always wanted to. I mean, I built Emaneska because I do. I've got some slight Scandinavian and Scottish ancestry in me, and I also grew up in Scotland, so I was surrounded by rolling mountains and hills and kind of dark pine forests and castles and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And yeah, I love Scandinavian and kind of Germanic culture, even just Europe in terms of in general. I love European culture and architecture. And that's kind of the world I built with Emaneska, write what you know. And so I've always wanted to see it, outside of my mind and experience it and stuff like that. But it is an incredibly dangerous world, full of like monsters and magic. Is there another one that I think that would be Emaneska? I think I could survive. I think I could maybe survive a year in Emaneska because I could just hide in different places that I know are roughly safer and stuff like that. If I was just a normal kind of, street kid or peasant or something like that, I think I could probably just scrape through. Otherwise, the world that I have written most recently, or the series I've been working on with David Estes the last couple of years, I think is also my imagination gone wild. It's got mile high moving trees and it's in a completely arboreal world with kind of a lot of different kind of mythologies built into it. And I think that would be quite fun. So yeah, I think I could survive as long as I didn't, because you can't go into the loam, you can't leave the tree. You can, but it's incredibly dangerous. So I think I'd be very happy if I could just stay in the treetops and maybe survive a year. And there's a very kind of strict law-based kind of community and society as well. So it's not necessarily as cutthroat as some of my other worlds. The world of Chasing Graves, I'd probably last 3 nights because that's a world based on murder. So that's absolutely
Right.
fine. Yeah.
Right. What substance do you find yourself writing under the most? I mean, and I do mean things like caffeine, alcohol, etc. I don't mean, well, I mean whatever. Everybody has their own, I guess, muse inspired substance, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I write pretty sober. I haven't drank caffeine in a long time. Nicotine is probably the only thing I really kind of go for. So yeah, it's kind of something. I mean, I do live in a a part of the world that a lot of drugs are very available and free legally as well. So it's something that, I have dabbled with in the past, in terms of, using like marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, it's just something I'm at my best, I think, when I'm really, really focused. I've had a good night's sleep. I know it sounds boring, and writers should be. Actually, no, I'm going to change my answer because I forgot the obvious one is whiskey. I like a good dram, and I do like I said, going down to the pub, or to a bar and just sitting. I do find it does. Again, not like I write better, but obviously alcohol and things like it have an effect on you in terms of making you sometimes more confident or free or removing your worries, however it affects you. So I think a lot of the time, again, it's not like I need it every day, but it is nice to, pour a pint or a little dram and write. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's I think less about what I'm writing and just throw it all out there and I can fix it later. But most of the time, yeah, 80-90% of the time, I'm just sober as a judge with a vape and a laptop.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's not like you're chugging back alcohol like Ernest Hemingway.
No, which again is like, the idea of an author is for writing drunk and editing sober, but yeah, it's expensive and damaging.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean that's a good example
Yeah.
because what was his name? Fitzgerald, the Great Gatsby. He died of like
Yeah.
alcohol poisoning at the age
Yeah.
of 44. I mean,
Yeah. Not something I want to do. I have too many books to write. That's the other thing as well. You've got to take care of yourself. And that's, talking about fitness earlier and hobbies and making ssure you're able to write or in the right mind space. I think is really super important. So yeah, I mean, in my early days, I experimented a lot more, but yeah, I'm reach almost kind of at my 40s now. So yeah, I just find I write better, and it's I want to do something or write in a way that's the best for the books.
yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. So if I were to lay out, all of the fantasy creatures, characters, races, etc., what
Mm.
which of all of them? I mean, if you were to draw from, I don't mind wherever, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Tolkien, whatever. What
So
all of the
all the
whatever,
creatures.
which one do you think you find the
Yeah.
most interesting?
Mm. God.
And would you dare have it as a roommate?
I mean, it's the obvious answer. So that's the thing. I mean, if it's the way that I like to write my dragons, it's an obvious answer. It's not my final answer. I'm just kind of exploring this one. But I mean, I have always been fascinated with dragons in terms of, anatomy, just in mythology, how other people and writers explore them in their books and things like that. I've got them tattooed all over me. Um, and it's something that I would give a lot of thought to. Um, but a griffin is something that I never expected to put a griffin into one of my books. And as soon as I did, I was obsessed with this griffin character that I came up with, and I've always been obsessed with them ever since. I think it was there's a scene in the Dungeons and Dragons film, not the first one, but the one that came out 10, 12 years ago or something like that, where a guy just leaps onto the back of a griffin and flies off. And I'm just like, yes, yes, that's exactly what I want. There's something about that, mammal meets, the frosty of kind of like the mammal, the lion aspect meets kind of the silent judgment of a kind of the eagle side of it and the kind of like the wisdom of both. It's just there's something about a griffin I think is really really kind of fascinating to me, and I think yeah, not a dragon roommate, but maybe a griffin roommate could be fun. Other than that, I mean, I like an elemental, fire elementals. Oh yeah, some things I really, really enjoy. Oh God, I mean, there's almost so many to go through in my head. I'm just trying to like racking through the list of creatures. Yeah, I do. There's something about ghosts, wraiths, phantoms, however you want to describe them as well. Did a huge amount of research into the paranormal when I was writing Chasing Graves, and as a horror fan, I love paranormal things as well. And it's just there's something about the different kind of types or the different kind of iterations we've got and how people have played around with those. Because I think as well, it's just like they're completely even in our world. There's something just we can't control, we don't know, are they real or are they not? What do they want? That kind of thing. How do you deal with them? How do you invite them? There's all these kind of, rules and no rules to it. I'm really kind of fascinated with the idea of that. The one that I was afraid of when I was a child, terrified, I watched this old kind of like 50s, 60s film, forget what it's called. And there was the Banshee, that came for someone who was about to die, and it was just the classic kind of wailing. I think it was like a carriage type deal, with these wailing kind of like horses and things like that, and it absolutely terrified me. So I think that's where the obsession began.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a real difficult question. I know that. So
it is
because there's just so much out there, you'd be like, hey, usually whatever comes to our
I
mind
know there's
first.
so many creatures. When you said Dungeons and Dragons,
Go ahead.
yeah. It's like when you said Dungeons and Dragons, I can like almost go through the kind of like creature book in my head that I've read so many times and be like, wow. I tell you what, I've got the thing with kind of like crow bipeds, or corvid based bipeds as well, like crow folk, crow people. I put them into like 2, 3 of my books now. It's just something about that I really enjoy as well.
So do you know what you call two crows sitting together?
One crow short of a
An
murder?
attempted murder.
I knew it had something to do with that.
I think it's one of the goofiest jokes out there.
Nice. I like that. I like that a lot.
Right. Let's see. If we were... Well, let's see here. 3 minutes in. Let's look at let's go with some of the stuff as being an author. Have you ever received maybe the strangest or the funniest message from a fan? And if so, what was it?
The first one that springs to mind is I had a review for my Weird West steampunk fantasy series that I wrote called Scarlet Star Trilogy. I think roughly, I'm trying to remember it verbatim. It was, I don't like Westerns and I don't like fantasy, 1 star. I was thinking, well, why did you buy it?
Right.
Why the hell did you buy it? It's quite obvious. It says it right there. I mean, that's the thing. I've been kind of blessed with a lot of really nice messages, I think. I mean, we're all inundated right now with weird kind of AI fueled marketing and pitches and review pitches and things like that. But yeah, I can't think of one that is like incredibly odd. I did have someone at a signing ask if they could draw, because as I sign it, sometimes I have in the past done little weird sketches and things like that if asked, and someone wanted to draw me just to draw a cow, just a random cow, and there's a cow in my book at one point. I don't think it's Nathan. Is there a cow in my book? I mean, there are cows and like there are sheep and pigs and horses and things like that, but yeah, and they just wanted like a lifelike cow, not a cartoon cow, which is the only type of cow I can draw. They were like, I want the most lifelike cow you can draw covering the page. And they didn't even want my signature. And that was at a signing from an existing reader who brought the book along. And I thought, why not? Because, a lot of people have in-jokes or, obsessions or just find things funny that we don't all share the same sense of humor, which is unfortunate, but also the beauty of kind of human nature in general with humans. But I drew a cow.
That'd be interesting if you were to.
But yeah, I drew a cow, so that was an interesting.
If you were to go to that person's house and be like, you got all these authors, and you open up all the pages, and it's just cows drawn by these different people.
Yeah. I've come across like a load of readers like that who, I like this in my book, or can you make that kind of comment, or and they do get kind of like a theme going, which is great. I know a lot of authors have experienced that. I'm all here for it. I think it's great. So yeah, I really hope that person just has a collection of books with hand-drawn cows in it, like you said. But other than that, I'm trying to think if I've had any. I mean, everyone gets odd messages on TikTok and Twitter and TikTok as well. Social media in general, everyone gets kind of the odd comment. But yeah, nothing apart from those two are really kind of springing to mind, because I think I have been lucky, and my readers have been very nice and very friendly. Yeah,
and good. The other thing that I was kind of curious of is when we write anything, there's like these lists of taboo tropes. Don't make your hero the prophetic one who grew up as a farm boy. Uh, but look, man, I actually think some of these
Yeah.
tropes are really cool. Sometimes I kill the character in the
Yeah.
story. I think that's funny. Just go ahead and kill the farm boy that was prophesied. I mean, that's hilarious. But what's
I've
right?
done
Which is the
that.
trope that you basically secretly love and that you would really actually do incorporate into anything you write?
I love a prophecy. Subverting it or getting it to the end. I love a prophecy. I like the idea of like foresight or that there's kind of, puppeteers, machinations going on. Ooh, I kind of talking swords, talking weapons. I love that. I absolutely love it. And I've got a talking spear. I've got Pointy from Chasing Graves as a talking sword. I've got a knife that whispers to people in another one. I'm going to put a kind of an AI sentient gun into this one, which again, none of it's new ideas, but I just love a weapon or, however they've got their AI, ghosts, haunted, spells, whatever, souls. In fact, I just wrote a short story where there's a witch hidden in these gauntlets. I read that for not Grimdark magazine, the Unavowed anthology. It's called "Curse These Metal Hands," which is a quote from. I've mentioned Peep Show twice in this podcast. I'm not sure why, but it's a quote from Peep Show, and it's I just love souls and things just being in other things. I think it's jokes. I don't know why. I love it. It's one of my favorites. A couple of others I really like. Um, it sounds very romanticy, but the kind of forced proximity, not necessarily enemies to lovers, but enemies to friends. I love that when you throw two opposite people into a situation, whether they're shackled together, forced together, thrown into a pit together. You see it all the time, and then by the end of the film, they would do or die for each other, and I love that as well. I think it's great. I think it's all about character progression. It's a huge well of snarky banter and kind of awkward scenes. I think, yeah, it's one of my favorites. And I think, like you said, tropes, people subvert tropes all the time, which I think is fun. But, there's a reason we have these kind of codified stories, or we've been kind of telling a lot, very similar stories for hundreds, thousands of years. It's because that's what we want to read, and that's why you see a lot of authors now, openly talking about the tropes that they use in their books, subverted or not, or inverted. And I think it's because that's what people, it's like an ingredients list or, on a menu. You're saying, I like that, I like that. I'm not sure about that one, but I'll give it a try. Oh, they've done something different with this one. I think it's really fun. But yeah, those are talking swords and forced proximity.
That's
I think it's
good.
really fun.
Yeah, every once in a while, we do have our own preferences when it comes to genre, right? I mean, we do specifically like, if
Mm,
we're fantasy, well, maybe we're just sword and sorcery fantasy. Maybe, we're not into,
mm,
dragon romance or whatever the heck is popular right now. Uh, but you're
yeah,
right. I would imagine that if somebody was picky on their genre, that they should be picky on their trope. They're going to go after the
yeah,
prophecy that went, prophecy
absolutely.
farm boy, right?
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah. I also I happen to love the kind of the villain's victory speech. That's a good one as well. The walking slow motion away from an explosion. Excellent. Love that. Always love that. The hero rising up at the last minute and using that little thing that happened way back at the start of the book. Love it. It's great stuff. As I say, I grew up on a lot of movies in general. Like I'm actually more of I'm a bibliophile, of course, but I'm probably even more of a cinephile. So yeah, it's just something that and you'll find obviously a buttload of tropes in movies all the time because that's what we
It's
want.
true. It's
Yeah.
true. All right, let's look at what's going on with Kickstarter. We're talking on November 8th, and your Kickstarter concludes the
hmm
14th.
Yeah, we have basically just shy. I think it was 6 days as
Mm-hmm.
of today because it's launched in Pacific time. Like I think it's 6 a.m. I got up to launch that one. So yeah, yeah. It's going incredibly well. I'm so pleased. It's Kickstarter 4 of 4 for the Emaneska series, 4 books, 4 Kickstarters. Every single one has just astounded me with the support from existing readers, but also new readers who are taking a chance on something that looks pretty and they might never have actually read. So yeah, it's a lot of work for anyone out there who's thinking of a Kickstarter. Don't underestimate the amount of kind of admin and googling and emailing and marketing you have to do as well. There's a lot of different facets to a Kickstarter, but they're an incredibly rewarding, way of funding. Either it's a new book, a special edition, an audiobook, a game, whatever else you want to kind of fund. It's a great way of, getting them off the ground, but also really deepening that relationship with your backers, your readers, your funders, etc. And it's just fun to see as well, just watching it just tick up. If you do it successfully, it's incredibly rewarding. And yeah, I've just honestly been honored to be able to create these editions, because it's a lot harder to do it all yourself without the Kickstarter, because you need a good chunk of funds to get these things done. So yeah, it's a great way to facilitate that. And the products that have come out of my Kickstarters, the special editions, it's been so amazing to work with the artists to get challenge coins made. I never thought I'd do that, because we hit that stretch goal over the last 3 projects and just hit a challenge coin stretch goal for this project. So yeah, there'll be 3 different challenge coins. I've got character art postcards, I've commissioned maps. So it's generated a huge amount of really awesome media and extra stuff that I wouldn't have had, if I hadn't done these hardcovers. And the hardcovers, thanks to my artist Rachel Sinclair, Claymore Covers, for the exterior, and Dennis Kornev, Soroka Karen, all of my other artists that I've been working with as well. It's so fun, and it's the products, the hardcovers. I still just stare at them, flip through them. I don't read because I know all the
You know
words,
all the
so,
words.
but yeah, and it's I know all the words, yeah. But I just flip through them because the interior design is very nice indeed, as well as the exterior. Yeah,
I agree. An owner of the 3 out of the 4. I'll get my 4th one whenever they come out. So
yes,
that's
yeah,
right.
next year.
And let's see. So with that, with that Kickstarter stuff, and you've gone through all of this. It's been a couple years now. Yeah,
4 years, 4 and a bit, I think, because there's a slight delay this year, unfortunately, with a lot of things changing in the printing and kind of shipping world. And
right, it's about 4 years of these. 1 a year, that's been about what it's been. And at the beginning of them, I think you were participating in the spraying of the color edging. I mean, you still doing that?
Oh God, absolutely not. That was one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my publishing career. I'm still finding, because they were scarlet or red sprayed edges, and I thought, it was about 350 copies that I had to spray. I think, that's what roughly about that, for the first run that I did. I thought it was going to be easy. I didn't think it was going to be easy. I thought it'd be kind of straightforward, but just take a bit of time. It took me about triple the time I thought, and it was about 10 times to 100 times more difficult than I ever considered. And I'm like I said, I'm still finding red residue in my apartment and other places that I borrowed and rented to spray these things. So God knows how much red paint I actually inhaled over the course of the months that I was doing that. But they ended up well. And I taught myself airbrushing, which is great. Got all the equipment, which is kind of fun. And when it went right, it was a seamless process. Because obviously you've got to mask all the books and make sure that's perfect, and then if you get it wrong, you're ruining a perfectly good special edition hardcover. So there are a few that went wrong, but that's another skill, another feather in my cap that I could use if I needed to. But I've learned my lesson, and get the printers to spray your edges and do all of the stuff. Like, the manufacturing should be somewhere else and done by other people. And it is good. I mean, it's fun if you want to try it for a book or two, but a pile of 350 books actually is a lot more than you think it is.
That's a lot more books than it looks like. Man.
Yeah, it is. It's like, it's not obviously numerically wise. There's a lot of authors out there who do runs of, thousands, tens of thousands, and things like that, which is incredible. Um, and, mine was a very, very humble pile, but it still is way more boxes than you think it's going to be. I now get about 2 pallets delivered, on a ship and on a train. And they fill up my apartment for 2 weeks while I sign them, which is still, and even that takes days. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different authors how they're signing books now and stuff like that. How it's usually the page before it gets put together into the binding, stuff like that. I've seen all sorts.
The
Yeah,
tip-ins, yeah.
exactly. And then you're doing, you get the
Mhm.
books and then you sign each and every single one of those. Yeah, and then stamp every single
Yeah.
one of them.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I love my stamp, yeah. And it's kind of quality control as well, just making sure each book is perfect before it goes to a backer. I get to do it. And obviously, sometimes I get to crack the actual, because once you've been sprayed, sometimes the pages, they have a very slight adhesive kind of edge to them. So they stick. So you get a very satisfying crackle as you kind of split the pages apart, which is really fun. Yeah.
Cool. So, what are some of the things that you've learned doing the Kickstarter that you're going to be able to, I'm assuming, engage in the next time? And then what are your goals for
Mm.
what's the next set? I mean, what are you thinking about doing next with Kickstarter?
For Kickstarter, I'd love to fund the next 3, because we've done the Emaneska series, which is 4 books, and obviously I wrote a sequel series of 3, so there are 7 books overall in the Emaneska saga. So I would love to just finish that off, and do 3 matching hardcovers for Forever King, Heavy Lies the Crown, and To Kill a God. So I think that's probably going to happen. I probably won't do another 3 years because it's a lot of work. I might just do a project of all 3, not an omnibus, but just 3 separate books in one project. Because I've spent a lot of time finding the right printers, and the guys that I'm working with now are incredible. So yeah, that's kind of my plan essentially. What I've learned is, really, really vet the people that you're choosing. Spend a lot of time making sure things are gonna actually be produced correctly and to the standards and quality you want. That you're using reliable suppliers and printers, because I did have a bit of issue with a couple of people in the past that just weren't as professional, or maybe just got things wrong sometimes. So I avoided a lot of trouble, but it could have been worse. And there's a lot of authors out there who have unfortunately worked with subpar printers, suppliers, or artists that don't deliver as they should. And things happen, shit happens, stuff goes wrong. That'll always happen in any industry. But the amount of kind of, if you do a lot of groundwork, you can either kind of head it off or reduce and minimize the kind of trouble and the stress that it causes. But otherwise, simplicity is key. When you're actually looking at your Kickstarter project, a lot of when I started off, I had a lot more kind of reward tiers and kind of other things, and that obviously just kind of not complicates. I mean, it does, but adds a lot more. Well, it's very easy for a project to sort of grow almost exponentially, because you've got all the different. If you have 50 different items to ship, it gets very complicated very quickly. So simplicity is key. And again, I think backers just want to see simplicity. Do I want this reward, that reward, or that reward? They don't want to have to sift through 10 different things to figure out what they're getting or not getting. Be realistic with your goals as well. And I've also realized that you do have to do a lot of marketing. It's like launching a book. It's the project requires a huge amount of outreach, social media, sometimes ads, a lot of support from fellow authors and readers as well. And it's something that it's 24/7 sometimes doing this. But yeah.
Wonderful. Anything that you think you will do or should have done differently? I mean, obviously from your first launching Kickstarter to obviously this is number 4. What was something that you said, hey, besides not spraying the edges yourself, what is something else you're like, hey, I'm not going to do this ever again?
Yeah, aside from the simplicity and the other things I mentioned, I mean, I can't really. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like again, I've been quite lucky, and because I did a graphic novel Kickstarter years and years and years ago for book 1 as well. So I think this is now my 5th Kickstarter overall. And yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons, but I think I necessarily, aside from slimming down the rewards, working with the right people. I don't really wouldn't change too much. Yeah, I've kind of got into kind of like a little process now. But yeah, it's just yeah, I don't think yeah, aside from the sprayed edges, which I still just God, that was a busy summer.
I
Yeah.
am actually seeing more and more authors spraying the edges of their books. For a long period of time, the hardcover was basically just bound, maybe not even Smith sewn,
Yeah.
and white edges. And now I'm starting to see,
Yeah.
if I go into Barnes and Noble, there's a lot of people coloring the sides of their pages.
Yeah. Publishers. Yeah, I remember when I first saw one. God, in about like 20, and I'm sure it was like other books around there, before that. But I remember when I saw a published, like a big five, as it was then, a big five published book that had black edges to it, and I thought it was incredible. And I think it was either like another fantasy or maybe because that was at the time there was a lot of kind of urban fantasy, sort of Twilight-esque books around, and I think it was sort of like a YA fantasy kind of thing. It was stunning. I was like, how is this done? But yeah, and now you're looking at printed edges. Like if anyone, if you've ever seen the broken binding, and a lot of other bookshops like the broken binding, and the special editions that are coming out from, the publishers in general, yeah, printed edges are stunning. And I think it's kind of difficult because obviously it's raising the bar for the average, not the average book, but like your kind of trade paperback or just, standard hardcover now looks like this. So where's the ceiling? Because then then you've got these special editions that are on top of that. So then they have even more complicated sprayed edges or, incredible covers and ribbons, gilded edges, all sorts of fun things. And it's, I'm worried where is the ceiling? And where do we kind of leave room for just your standard books and things like that? But I love to see it. It's incredible. And yeah, long may it last because it's, books are beautiful objects to be treasured. So making them more beautiful is it's great. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, a note here is, your Kickstarter sitting at 344 backers today. Canada dollars,
Yeah.
60.
Oh, I've gone up one since I checked.
Your Canadian dollar amount 67,069 out of your 9,500 goal. It's looking
Nice.
great.
Yes.
6 days to go. This is awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is this the most that you've gone? I haven't looked back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just behind the last one. So, as in book 3. So, yeah, they've gone up each time. I think the first one was I was writing this all out several days ago for the actual Kickstarter story. I think the first one funded about 420%, I think. Then the second one funded around kind of 600. I think the last one was like 700, 800%. And so we're verging onto that. So yeah, it's been amazing. And Kickstarters do tend to have kind of a very big start. Like a lot of successful Kickstarters you see, where the marketing's, there's been a lot of work in the marketing, or the author has an incredible fan base, because they're so, like, the Dungeon Crawler Carl comic right now, I think, is almost broken Kickstarter. I think it's one of the biggest book themed or book industry Kickstarters aside from Brandon Sanderson's. I think last time I checked it was like 2 million, something like that. Insane. So I'm nowhere near that. I'm still very humble and very, very small fry. But yeah, if you put a lot of work in, you do a lot of marketing, you'll find that there's a very kind of steep, initial day or 2 days of funding where you kind of will do a lot of your work then. And then a lot of Kickstarters will, in my experience, kind of have a good gradient, like basically a more shallow gradient, kind of more of a steady progression. And then there always seems to be a bit of a kind of another uptick at the end as well, in the last kind of 7 days, 3 days, 24 hours. That's because Kickstarter will send a lot of reminder emails. You appear in different places on the Kickstarter website as well. So yeah, it's going to be a fun kind of next 6 days, and really looking forward to it, seeing if we can break the record of the third.
All right. My last question will be, people to find more of Ben Galley, the things that you offer, things like that. Somebody can send you a message, whatever.
Sure.
Encourage the listeners who are maybe neophytic authors and they kind of need some encouragement. What can we do?
Of course. Well, you can always find me, reach out to me anytime, any place. I'm more than happy to help you as an author, reader, whatever you like. So Linktree /Ben Galley, BenGalley, anytime. you can use that, and you can find all of my links there. I'm on pretty much every social media platform as well. I have a consultancy website as well if you want to learn more about self-publishing and marketing, called shelfhelp.info. But otherwise, yeah, feel free to reach out. And if you're thinking of writing a book, fantastic, go and write it. If you're thinking about publishing, it'll be one of the best decisions you've ever made, usually. That's been my experience. It's the best job in the world. And so, yeah, otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Brandon, for having me on the show.
Of course, appreciate your time.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Thank you for listening. This is a free podcast based upon the value for value model. If you find value in this, or any episode, you can return that value by liking the show, subscribing to this channel, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend on your social media accounts. You can also donate on my website. Thank you again. This is BT for Truth and Shadow Podcast. You are the light in the darkness.
It's a very strange, funny time where everybody would love to be able to be themselves if they can.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. You take the red pill. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. You stay in Wonderland. Believe whatever you want to believe.
Fight every battle, everywhere, always, in your mind. Every possible series of events is happening all at once. Live that way, and nothing will surprise you. Everything that happens will be something that you've seen before. Because they must fall in line with the person who fell in. You want to live that kind of life? I wish you the best. I'll be on the other side somewhere.
The truth, nothing more.